So this is our introduction to the fourth wave, a knowledge-based economy, knowledge-based world. We can look at technology as a curse, or we can look at it as a blessing, and it all depends on what we are trying to achieve. We believe fourth wave encompasses all the original three waves that we have gone through. So we started out with the agriculture-based economy. We have any farmers here? Marwan is from Missouri, so we have one. So what was the second wave after the first wave? Industrial Revolution, right? And the cars came in. And the third wave was about what?
It's up there, information.
Right. So it's an open book, right?
Yeah.
So third wave gave us a big head start into the modern economy where the acceleration started to happen. Intel started back in 1973 range, and today they are all over the world. Then you look at Microsoft, you look at all the other companies that occurred. One of the cutest story that I always enjoy about the third wave is when I was at Merrill Lynch, I worked with a young man whose uncle, Mr. Schwartz, was considered Mr. Seattle. And when Bill Gates got a call from that vice president at IBM telling him that you need to come and write this software for us that will change the way we do computing, Bill's mother became what we call the tiger mom. She got extremely upset at Bill, and she said, no way under the sun you are going to do that. You will stay at Harvard and you will not leave. So there was a huge big turmoil in the family. And Bill's father, Mr. Gates Sr., is a very wise man. He said, how about we go to Mr. Schwartz, he's an entrepreneur, he understands the modern economy. Let us talk with him. He was the early investor in Amazon and Starbucks and you name it, all different companies. So Mr. Schwartz listened to Bill's mother. Her case was, how many kids get to go to Harvard? Of course, very few. You went there, right? And this company wants him to change his lifestyle and do some software. That means he will have to drop out of Harvard. And that's a big problem for us. So Mr. Schwartz says, great, I appreciate you sharing that with me. Then he asked Bill, what is your take on what mom is saying? And Bill said, I have an opportunity to change the way the entire globe will do the computing. And I got a call from this vice president, and he's only 19 years old. So Mr. Schwartz had to give his final edict, and he said, I have heard many kids go to Harvard, but I never heard a 19-year-old getting a call from a vice president at IBM. This is the time where IBM used to be God. You're talking about very early 80s, late 70s. And then the rest is history. So the fourth wave that we are in now, we are calling it the knowledge-based economy, knowledge-based world. Bunch of people are also calling this wave the fourth industrial revolution. This revolution is so composite. It encompasses so many things that the best of the best in the world are confused. This is creating major turmoil in our society. It is also creating huge amount of opportunities. So you look at a little company today which is only 7, 8 years old, called what? Uber. And we are using Uber as a verb rather than a noun anymore. We talk about Uberization. Uber today is worth more than GM, Ford, Chrysler combined when it comes to market value. They don't own a single car. Those three companies have been around for 100 plus years. So the joint age of those three companies will be a couple of 100 years. Uber is 7 years old. And what is the magic behind Uber? Uber in 5 minutes can take care of hiring tens of thousands of people on their app. And they can do millions and hundreds of millions of rides all over the world in terms of the way we use taxi cabs and everything else. We believe Uber is only just a start, but you have Uber Eats. You are going to have Ubers that will just take people to Disneyland. They'll have a million different categories. In Texas, a very fine young entrepreneur has started the Uber of lawnmowers, where if you need quick lawn mowing, there will be a quick service that will come in and take care of the lawn. So the greatness of our economy, the greatness of America, I always took the position that America is a verb, not a noun. It stands for doing great things. We are a software. Anybody that tried to create a noun, they have been defeated. So America is about communication, it's about opportunities, it's about equal rights, equal dignity, equal opportunities, and equal justice. That's what brand America is all about. And we as a nation, we always have stayed one wave ahead of the world. What does that mean? In the good old days, we used to have VCR machines. How many of you ever saw a VCR machine? Even you did, and you're too young. I don't know how that is. So United States created VCR, and we chose not to manufacture VCR after a while. So we had our politicians, they would go to these rallies, and they'll ask people, how many of you own VCR? And everyone will raise their hand. Then they'll say, how many of you own a Scud missile? Nobody would raise their hand because nobody did. Then the politicians will say, see, we are building things that we don't need, and they will use their own methodology to influence their base. What they weren't telling people was the VCR market was flat like a pancake. Flat. $1 billion, not growing. So United States chose to let the Taiwanese and the Chinese and the Japanese and the other nations build VCRs because they had young manufacturing force. They were able to compete. We couldn't. What were we thinking and what were we doing? We were building movies, value added, $30 billion a year business that was growing at 30 to 40% per year. So that's basically the methodology. America being a very, very, very smart country, we have the independence, we can create organizations, businesses in 5 minutes, and we can make things happen here. This is the only country, even now, where dreams do come true. As long as you are willing to work hard, you have a business plan, and you are willing to pay the price. Now, yes, there are complainers. Yes, there are complainers. Like my favorite saying is, everyone wants to go to heaven, no one wants to die, and there ain't any direct flights. There ain't, right? So as long as you're willing to work for it, dreams do come true. Because this is the nation where a son of a parking lot attendant that works with me, and he's only 80 years old. I have known him for a long period of time. Lee Kopp, he's in Edina, Minnesota. He created a money management practice and he has a family foundation that has over $100+ million, and he gives scholarships to kids in Midwest. And his father used to make $30 a week. So he was looking for 11 different reasons how to make things happen rather than why things weren't happening, right? So attitude plays a very big role in why we always stay ahead of the curve, as they call it, and why we are always one wave ahead of the rest of the world. So when we look at the investment opportunities, we are going to have a series of talks as far as the fourth wave is concerned. Today, part of the time we will be spending will be investing in the fourth wave. One of the cutest books I was introduced to more than 20 years ago by a retired Harvard finance professor whose son used to play soccer with my late son. The name of the book is Extraordinary Popular Delusion and the Madness of the Crowd. Charles Mackay wrote the book in 1850. So this book basically talks about all through history there will be opportunities, and then people will do what? They will create bubbles out of those opportunities, and then you will have the tulip bulb mania, and you are going to have the South Sea bubble, you'll have the railroad bubble, and you'll have the dot-com bubble, and you'll have all those different bubbles. So today, one of the term everyone and their mother talks about is what? Artificial intelligence. Are we all using artificial intelligence? We already are. It's called Siri, right? And it's just a start. So right now, the amount of monies that are going into artificial intelligence market is very large chunk of money. Recently, the Saudis, sovereign fund raised close to $100 billion, and they are putting money into artificial intelligence area. So what we are looking at right now is, are we making some new bubbles at this time? So we have a bubble watch within our own shop. We are looking at a company like NVIDIA that makes artificial intelligence chip that goes into Tesla and a bunch of other stuff. It's already trading at a 73 times price to cash flow. Price to cash flow, which is unbelievably high. All they have to do is to make one mistake and miss one expectation, and they'll be cut by 60–70%. So we want to make sure that people realize that there will be opportunities, but there will also be downside, and they need to make sure that they are working with the right kind of a plan. So we have taken the work of two of the greatest Americans. One is Dr. Benjamin Graham, who taught Warren Buffett how to invest. He was that famous Columbia University law investment professor. And we have taken the work of Dr. Harry Markowitz, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in modern portfolio theory. And he is the founder of a concept called efficient frontier, creating the efficient frontiers. So we have taken the work of those two gentlemen. And the idea is to stay in the northwest quadrant on the capital market lines. That means you're not taking too much risk, and you are creating the best in class efficient frontier. So you're getting the right kind of return based upon the risk that you are taking. And if you take nothing from this presentation today, but only take one thing home, it will make you rich forever, because you will learn how to get rich slow. So the first rule of getting rich is to think about how to get rich slow rather than fast. There is no need to go 110 miles an hour because you'll get killed. But if you are going slow, that is the best methodology. So that means this is the risk-free return And these are the standard deviation that basically stand for risk. And these are the returns. And the spot that we like is right around here. That means we are taking the minimum possible standard deviation and getting the maximum possible return from that. And that's the methodology people like Warren Buffett uses. And we have been very satisfied using that methodology. Because in the investment business, there are only two rules. Rule number one, don't lose money. And rule number two is don't forget rule number one. So those two rules, as long as we remember that, and we remember that you will want to get rich slow, you will end up doing better than majority of the people. What would be one of the example? So there was a young kid in Omaha, Nebraska, and he claimed he started investing at age 12. But he also criticized himself. He said, I kind of started late. And his name was Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett, in this time horizon, if you look at his track record from 1965 till end of 2016, he brought a rate of return of 20.8% per year. And people that gave him a buck, they ended up with lousy $1,972,595 during the time horizon. And the market gave you 9.7%, and the overall gain came to $12,717 during this time frame. So the compounded return of this magnitude can create real wealth, but the idea is it takes time. Everyone would like to get rich by tomorrow morning. In the financial market, it doesn't work that way. It's not timing the market that makes you rich. It's the time in the market that makes you rich. So what I like to do is to stop here and open this section up for questions and comments, just so that all of us are on the same wavelength. Please.
The graph of the kind of the risk efficient, it's hard to see from this far back.
Yes.
What were the actual numbers there?
Okay. So we will show that to you. So basically, we have only plotted from 0% to 25%. At 0%, nothing moves. You have your money in your mattress, and make sure you don't lose it, right? And then we are showing returns all the way up to 12% per year. And so this line here is the returns, and this is the standard deviation. That means the risk, the volatility. And you'll have copy of this presentation, electronic copy soon. That's a good question, thanks. Any other questions so far? Okay. So the next item that we look at as professional money managers, whether you are in the third wave, fourth wave, is what we call looking for black swan. So how many of you ever have seen a black swan in your life? No one has, right? Okay. Australia has some. I haven't seen one. So black swan, there was a book written by Nassim Taleb. He was an American of Lebanese background back in 2006-07. And the name of the book was Black Swan. So Black Swan moment happens like nobody can ever expect. So our last recession back in 2007-08, that happened from mortgage crisis. And that is what we call the Black Swan moment. Now, potentially moving forward, are we looking at any Black Swan moments? We believe there are three things that are worth us watching for moving forward. One of them will be the Chinese debt market, the amount of leverage they have taken to build their economy is very, very heavy duty. It's many, many, many times over the overall GDP. So China as a country is blessed with a lot of people, a lot of population. Lot of their population is moving from rural area to urban area, and it is very important for Chinese government to make sure that their economy can grow at least at 6, 7, 8% a year so that they keep creating jobs for their people. If they don't do that, what will happen? If people aren't happy, what do? They strike, they go into turmoil, and they don't want their people to go into turmoil. So Chinese government is focusing on making sure that they keep their population happy by keeping them employed in some sort of industry. Whether they make a profit or not, they just want to make sure people are employed. So that's one black swan moment we are looking at. Second one we are looking at is the European Central Bank running out of bullets. What does that mean? European Central Bank, not only they have brought the interest rate down to 0%, but few of the European economies actually have a negative interest rate where they are charging their depositor money for putting money in the bank. Switzerland, Denmark, and things of that sort. The reason they're doing that is the velocity that keeps the economy running has been dead for some time, especially after the 2007 crisis. So I will take 2-3 minutes and talk about velocity, and I'll be happy to answer any questions on that. Velocity basically means that you go out and you spend $1 at Starbucks, there will be a multiplier effect. In the old days, there will be a multiplier effect of 51 bucks. Now this Starbucks employee will go out, get a haircut, they get paid, they pay for their apartment, they pay for everything else. Lately, that has not been taking place in the economy, and the world is facing deflation rather than inflation. We have inflation in certain markets in terms of rental market, too much demand for housing, not enough supply, things of that nature. But overall, we have way too much production and we do not have enough demand. And we believe there are 3 factors that are happening in the wave we are in. One is technology, second is globalization, and third is demographic. How many Americans every day are turning to age 65? Anyone has any idea for that number? 10,000. So 10,000 Americans per day are reaching that age. So as you get, more and more senior in terms of age, one thing that happens is you're not going to go out and create a new household. So the household formation rate starts to dwindle down, and demographic is playing that. And then in a country like Japan, we have a negative birth rate. And who is to be blamed for that is a very interesting thing. In Japan, not many women are getting married. Toyota taught them, buy a Toyota, it's more reliable than your husband. So now they are driving around in a Toyota and they are saying, we have a car. We don't have to worry about having kids. So Japan is having a negative birth rate, and many of the Western economies, industrialized economies, are having the same situation. So demographics is playing a very important role, and then you have the technology playing a very, very big role, and then the globalization. So how is the new business model working in the 4th wave is a very interesting point that we need to cover. I spent time with a gentleman in Portland who owned a couple of companies one is called Monster Switch, and one is called Monster Fuse. And he was telling me the story how he got a call from the vice president of purchasing from Tektronix. He asked him to come over and give him a bid on all their electrical equipment that they had. Switches, this, fuses. So he goes there and he told them that I can only give you 10 to 15 cents on the dollar, but how would you be taking care of your supplies? And the vice president said, we will call you and you supply. He said, but I will have to charge you higher price, whatever my retail price is. And the gentleman said, I hope so, because we want you to stay in business. We are expecting you to supply us whatever we need. Then he found out what Tektronix was actually doing. Tektronix is owned by a company called Danaher. Danaher trades at between a 30 to 35 times price to earning multiple. They wanted to get rid of their entire ecosystem that is called purchasing department. Purchasing managers, purchasing clerk, purchasing director, you name it. And they were interested actually in saving $5 million a year from the overhead, and their stock trades at 30, 35 times. So they ended up creating wealth around $150 million from that action. So companies today, we can criticize all we want to criticize them, but they are all looking at their own interests, and they are looking at how can we be most efficient and how do we define what business we are in. So one of the things that's happening in the fourth wave is people have access to the knowledge and information at their fingertip much faster, much sooner than they used to have in the previous waves. They don't have to go through 1,000 files. Things are at their fingertip. So companies are basically saying, we only want to stick to our knitting. And that means if Nike feels that their sales are going to be off globally, they will tweak their model by laying off 2% of their worldwide sales force like they recently did out of Portland. So those kind of actions are going to be happening at a much sooner, faster pace. And that is something people need to be looking at as they move into the future. But what does that mean is there will be jobs created, because I'm extremely optimistic about the future. There will be jobs created, but you have to have more of an entrepreneur zeal. So in the fourth wave economy, it will be about creating your own a la carte menu and going out and taking orders from people and having many different streams of income. So the traditionalism that you can work for some company for 30 years will not happen. In the good old days, in Delaware, we had 35,000 men working for Bethlehem Steel, 35,000. Today, 0. Who is the largest employer in Delaware? Johns Hopkins Medical Center. Now, the people that are working at Johns Hopkins Medical Center, they have a very different skill set than people that were working over at Bethlehem Steel. So that means we need to create a population which is full of intellectual curiosity. Like Will Rogers said very nicely, right? Even though you're on a right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. So a lot of the people were stuck in the second wave of the revolution, and they decided that someday they will retire and they will continue to work in their steel mill or the coal mine or whatever business they were doing. In the fourth wave, companies like Nike are ordering the left size of the shoe from one plant on a totally different part of the world, right size, totally different part of the world. There was a software glitch, and a company that made a big boo-boo for them ended up losing the order because Nike figured out that if this group of people are doing the right size shoe, they will be more efficient. They'll be able to save maybe 7.5 cents per shoe. And when you're looking at hundreds of millions of shoes, it all adds up. So the way information is being processed, that itself has become a very big data industry by itself. Cloud has become a very large opportunity, and we have not even seen the first 5% of the cloud yet. We have a long, long way to go in many industries. If you look at our unemployment number that came in, we have like 4.4% unemployment, but we have 5.7 million jobs that are still open that we cannot fill. So if we don't do something regarding the immigration policy in this global marketplace, then we have issues with our farmland, agriculture, industry, a lot of different issues. So one of the black swan that keeps me up at night is if we mess around with our immigration protocols, we could end up losing 2 to 3 percentage points of our GDP, and that can bring our economy into a recession, especially in a very deflationary, slow growth mode we are in. That is a big concern, and that can be an issue moving forward. Any questions so far? Dudley, what do you think so far?
I'd be curious to hear you talk about the third Black Swan event.
Okay.
Maybe we're probably going to get to
Right.
that.
So the first black swan, thank you for bringing that up. There's the blessing when you have ADHD, you forget things, That's why I ask her. So the first black swan moment we talked about is the Chinese debt. And if at some point there is a turmoil, because at the end of the day, there is a power in this world which is bigger than the US government, bigger than all our military machines, and it's called the markets. Markets have a very efficient long nose. They're able to smell things before anybody else. So at some point, market can come and say, China, we cannot loan you any more money. You will have to get your house in order. And that can apply to anybody. So we believe our first black swan moment is the Chinese debt. The second black swan moment is the European Central Bank could run out of bullets. What does that mean? They have already gone in, they have purchased the bonds from the capital markets to bring the interest rate down. In the United States, we have used the term called what? Quantitative easing. That meant US government wanted to make sure that our capital markets were working efficiently, and we bring the interest rate down as low as we possibly can so that we can jumpstart the economy. So first thing we did, we went out and we bought all the bad debt, because a lot of the people don't understand one thing about Federal Reserve. There is no federal in the reserve. Federal Reserve is a group of private banks that own the whole show. It's not owned by US government. So Federal Reserve went out after the turmoil in 2007, 2008. They bought all the bad debt, all the bad mortgages. How many of you saw the movie called Big Short? So you remember the Big Short, right? Yeah. So when that medical doctor who was a money manager and he was getting calls from his limited partners, the place where Jonathan and myself used to rent a place from a hedge fund, they were buying those limited partnerships. And they ended up making a lot of money when the whole thing collapsed. So basically, if you saw the movie Big Short, where a stripper was blessed to get how many mortgages? 4, 5, 6, 7, right? She was just a stripper. Today, we have clients that are neurosurgeons, oncologists. They have a tough time getting a regular mortgage, even though they are making a lot of money. They have very high credit because the pendulum swing from one side to the other side. So going back to the European central bank, we believe they have already used everything they possibly could, where they have brought the rate down in some cases, not only zero, but little under zero in some cases, Switzerland and Denmark. So we feel that they will not be able to continue on bailing out the system. So that is a second concern we have. And the third concern that we have is Janet Yellen. She and her Federal Reserve Bank could increase the interest rate a little bit too fast, too much, and that can create a turmoil in our economy. So those are the three black swan moments that we are concerned about moving forward at this juncture. And most probably, it may not happen in our lifetime, because black swan come from a place that no one can expect. But we can only predict, we can take a look at it, evaluate, research. But at this juncture, those are the three key areas that we are concerned about. The fourth black swan that can come up could happen from the political turmoil, the greatest economy, the greatest nation on earth can have. Like this afternoon, the grand jury was appointed and things like that with what's going on around 1 o'clock. Wall Street Journal broke the news. So that can create issues. The fifth black swan we are looking at is the US market has already gone into the overvalue mode, where the total value of US markets now, equity, is around $25.5 trillion, and it's trading at 130% of our GDP as a nation. So that is getting to be in the overvalue territory. So we always overshoot or we undershoot. And our job is to make sure that we can stay in the middle somewhere. And that's one of the areas we look at. Can I answer any other question?
Yeah, I've got one. You mentioned
Please.
the Chinese debt measured by their GDP is at a very high level. How high is it relative to GDP?
In some cases, it is more than 3.5 to 4 times. Yes. And also because they don't have the transparency as we have, that is a very big issue, because what if they don't tell us the real truth? And that is an issue, because you have, I'm sure you have read about those cities they have created where they have the Starbucks signs and all sorts of things are happening, but no one is living there and no one is purchasing property there, but they ended up overbuilding a lot of things just to keep their labor force employed. I guess they call them, what do they call them? There is a term for it. It's like, it's not a ghost town, but it's just cities they have built. They have they're showing you that you have Starbucks coming in and this company is coming in, everything is coming in, but it's really not happening.
It's always risky to go into the Chinese market because of the way it's structured is that you sell your intellectual property and they manufacture it, but they could go rogue at any moment and take what it is
Right.
they're manufacturing for you. So
Right.
you can't technically open your own company there. It has
Right.
to be Chinese owned.
Right.
So there's always that risk when you go into their market, which happens a lot.
Marvin.
Yeah, on your number 3, what are the consequences, though, of not raising interest rates sufficiently to meet market forces, I
Yeah.
guess.
So in the good old days, when I was trained in the 80s, 84 area at Merrill Lynch, things used to be a whole lot easier to project in terms of the roadmaps. Today, what we have is if Federal Reserve does not increase the interest rate, people are going to say, oh my God, what if inflation shoots up? And I wish inflation shoots up. It's not happening because the risk we have is not inflation anymore, it's the deflation. There is too much supply of product and not enough demand coming from the consumer. Because one of the big issues we have in the US economy is the underemployment. And underemployment means you have a Yale PhD working at Starbucks as a barista, not able to earn the kind of living that they were planning on earning or should be earning. So some of those underemployment risks are keeping deflation down. And the issue we have is the unemployment rate, even though we all see the numbers, that it's like 4.4, 4.5%, which is very nominal. That means we have a full employment. But the underemployment is an issue, and a lot of the people have come out of the job markets. So that is one of the concerns. So Federal Reserve has set the goal. They would like to see 2% inflation back, and it is not happening in our society. So if they overshoot and they bring the rates up, that could create a turmoil for the mortgage market, and then housing could be affected, and then the number of people, multiplier effect, can be there. That can also take the air out of the stock market, and that affect the wealth factor. Any other questions on that? Okay. So we can go to the next one. Right. So we can show the price to cash flow. What we would like to do is we want to talk about one of the criteria people need to look at. There are three ways to evaluate companies. One is what is their EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. That means what is your operating income of a company. And that is a term called EBITDA, EBITDA. And we will send all of this over to you if you give us your email and stuff. Second thing we look at is cash flow. And third thing we look at is free cash flow. So let me share with you in a very simple language what that means. There is a company called Intel. Let's say at the end of the year, Intel has $30 billion of cash flow. And there is a company called Microsoft, and Microsoft has $30 billion of cash flow. Microsoft only spent $5 billion of that $30 billion in R&D, creating a plant or whatever. But Intel goes out and spends $25 billion in creating a new fab somewhere so that they have the most advanced chips in the world. So the free cash flow is a very important tool that we look at. That means how much extra money a company has that they can use in paying dividend, buying back their own stock, and keeping their financial health strong. So in this recent bubble we have created in technology, I'm calling it a bubble in a very simplistic fashion. I don't have all the final answers because this fourth wave is very mysterious wave. There are a lot of things that are occurring. So what we are looking at is we believe a whole bunch of people out there are going to get hurt in this new bubble, and they will end up spending so much opportunity, so much money without understanding where their money is going, because they go to a cocktail party, they hear their neighbor talk about how well they're doing. But what they have to come back to is number one, so there are three things we do in the investment business that makes you or breaks you. First, we want to make sure everyone should have an investment policy. Investment policy means you are coming to Oswego Heritage House, you had a roadmap, and you put it on your GPS and you're here. Same thing is with the investment policy. You got to have a goal, and you should know what your age group is, what your demographic is like, what your psychographic is like. What's the difference between psychographic and demographic? Demographic means there may be same age group people in a neighborhood. They're all between 50 and 70 as an example, or 80 or whatever. But one is a fly fisherman, and one likes to travel all over the world, and one doesn't do anything. So their savings rate will be different, their cash flow needs will be different. So that's the psychographic. Demographic is you may be the same age group, but psychographic, you're doing different crazy things, right? So investment policy enables you to have a roadmap. Second thing that we do is we execute the policy. That means, so investment policy will dictate how you will be invested. That will be based upon how conservative you are and what is your risk budget. So I'll tell you a story. 1987, I don't know how many of you remember October 19, 1987, we had a Black Monday. Market decided to drop only 22% in one day. Good thing about that was, you can fall down from the basement, and the correction happened very rapidly and very fast. And that day, John Templeton told his daughter that at least we don't have to worry about very long-term correction. It happened in a hurry. So the gentleman who was the instructor, professor for investment policy at the program I took back at University of Pennsylvania, Dale was asked by the treasurer for the state of Oregon, not the state of Oregon, I'm sorry, CalPER, in California, to come over and have a meeting with them. So first thing Dale did is ask the treasurer, who was depressed, he had his head down on the conference table, he thought the world is coming to an end. He said, look, world is not coming to an end. We need to check page 1 of investment policy. It said 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds. Bonds went up a lot that day, and the stocks dropped a lot that day. So they were able to have 60% in the stocks by selling a whole bunch of bonds, and then brought the bonds down to 40%. Doing that when Dow was at 1,622 points versus 22,000 points today turned out to be a good decision, because they followed what was in their investment policy. So that's the most important thing that we do for living in the business we are in. Second, we execute the investment policy to make sure that the asset allocation is proper in your accounts, because 90% of the returns in any portfolio comes from the asset class that you are invested in. And third is to make sure that we evaluate how well your investment policy is working. So those three things, when you have them, having a policy, this way you will not go out and gamble, you will not go out and listen to somebody that is telling you how to get very, very rich in Bitcoins, as an example. I'm getting calls from people. They're saying, what's your take on Bitcoins? A young friend of mine, he works as a financial analyst at OHSU. He was going into Bitcoins, and the other day they had a big crash, and just like that, it dropped. So having the policy will determine what your risk budget should be. and you will follow the budget. So if you have a budget for a Volkswagen, don't go out and sign up for a Rolls Royce because the monthly payment will be bigger than what the whole car will be, right? So we want to make sure people understand what the risk budgets are and what they do, for you. So in terms of evaluation, we have to remember very important rule, and that is you can go back 10,000 years ago when Prophet Abraham was walking on this earth as an example. I have to Google it to make sure it was 10,000 years. It might be a little bit more or less. Back then, there were markets, correct? People were trading something. They were trading camels, they were trading wheat, they were trading something, right? They may be trading coffee. I think coffee has been around for a while. So there will always be the markets. But the question is, if you lose your capital, an opportunity comes in tomorrow, would you be able to participate in that opportunity? So you look at someone like Warren Buffett, 35 some years back, he goes out and buys this little fun little company called what? See's Candies. And today, he takes out more than $100 million a year for an asset that he paid $35 million for as a dividend every single year. He keeps getting those returns. When he was a little kid, he used to buy 6-pack of Coke for 25 cents from his uncle's store in Nebraska, in Omaha. And he used to go door to door and he will sell each bottle for 5 cents. And he learned how he was making a 25% return on each quarter he was investing, he was getting 30 cents. And so he buys businesses that make sense. He does make mistakes also, but he buys businesses that make sense. So 2 key criteria we use. One, we use Dr. Benjamin Graham methods. That means you must have margin of safety when you purchase things. And second, we use Dr. Harry Markowitz's approach to make sure that you have proper asset allocation so that your volatility is as low as possible, so you don't get hit in a turmoil. So using those 2 methodology helps us, stay sane and be able to do things that we are able to do. So going back now into the 4th wave civilization, we believe 4th wave will enable people to come back to the basics, because we have overshoot as far as technology is concerned. We have overshot too much in the right field. Now people are craving for having basic human relationships. They want to come back and they want to find a way to marry their passion with their compassion. So we believe that this particular wave will have lots and lots of opportunities for people. There are a lot of people, they are scared that, oh my God, what if robot comes in, what will happen to my job? We believe there will be the new jobs that we are going to be seeing in the next 10 years, 15 years, we won't be able to recognize where they are coming from. Like somebody creating a Uber type service for house cleaning, Uber type service for doing your lawn, or cleaning your driveway, or a whole bunch of other things. So there will be a marriage between imagination, entrepreneur zeal, and the technology that will enable people to do a lot of wonderful things. So when you see disruption that comes from technology, the reason disruption happens is, number one, the existing businesses are not providing the best quality customer service. So you look at I'm not here to criticize the cab business, But when you look at the cab business in the old days and the Uber business, cabbies, a lot of them were smoking cigarettes in their cabs. They were not as clean as the Uber cars are. And getting a cab was not as fast as getting an Uber, where you can tell that my Uber is 7 minutes away from my home. And it's telling you now it's 3 and now 2 and 1. So disruptions will take place whenever a business is not doing their job to make sure that they are not only just satisfying the customer, but they are also delighting the customer. So you have to go beyond customer satisfaction in the fourth wave to keep the customer happy and going. So we can talk about Amazon on one side, and we can talk about Sears Roebuck on the other side. We look at Sears Roebuck, and Sears Roebuck is getting to be more like a casualty. And you look at Amazon, and Amazon is all about opportunity, where you can track your package, you can find out the best price you possibly can. And that is basically what fourth wave is offering. And that's the reason people cannot go back to typewriters or horses or steel mills or the coal mining jobs, because those jobs are not coming back. So wave has moved. So what will be some of the job opportunities for people in the fourth wave? Anyone has ideas what that would look like? What would be the common denominator? And what would be the traits that you will be needing for being successful in the fourth wave? What are some of the opportunities, and what would be some of the traits that you'll be needing? Intellectual curiosity will be very important.
Computer science?
Pardon me?
Computer science?
Computer science, very important.
Adaptability.
Very important. What else?
Emotional intelligence.
Very, very important. There is a company in Bay Area I'm working with that recently did a fundraise, and they are marrying emotional intelligence with artificial intelligence so that they can provide services for businesses to hire the right kind of people for that. So that is happening. Hey, Craig, take a seat.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's all right. Just join. So let's focus for a minute about intellectual curiosity. We had a very famous American president in the good old days. How many of you heard of John F. Kennedy? We all have, right? John F. Kennedy, as a man, was full of intellectual curiosity. We had a crisis, the Cuban Missile Crisis, that could have converted into a third world war back in 60s. President Kennedy chose to make his entire high command read a book called what? Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman. This particular book talked about how the First World War started. There was a miscommunication between the Prince of Venice and the Germans. And what happened? Tens of millions of people died. So President Kennedy took a position that under my watch, I will not allow a single human being to die. No innocent life should be lost. So in the middle of the night, he used to call the captain of every ship on a conference call that this is your commander-in-chief calling, and I want to make sure no trigger-happy general or admiral is asking you to push the button and get the war going. We are not planning on going to war unless we have exhausted every single option that exists. So that is the benefit of having intellectual curiosity. Thomas Friedman recently wrote a book called Thank You for Being Late. Thomas Friedman is considered the high priest of globalization. He has written many, many different books. In this particular book, he came across an immigrant working in a parking lot in Washington, D.C., where he would drive once a week to the parking lot, then he will take the train and go to work. So this parking lot attendant was from Ethiopia. He had an economics degree, bachelor's, and he also had his own blog. So he looked at Mr. Friedman and he said, Mr. Friedman, I enjoy reading your column. And I also have a column. And Friedman says, what do you have? And that led to this book called Thank You for Being Late. So Friedman learned that my competition today is not another journalist. He is my competitor because he also has a following. So the fourth wave is enabling people that can use the technology to start their own wave because they have a voice. As long as you have the intellectual curiosity, you're organized, you can go into business in 5 minutes. So this wave enables people to be able to do that. I'm very glad that a dear friend of mine just walked in, Craig Peterson. Craig, in the old days, created the microelectronic side of Intel when he was the GM there, and the Open Silicon and Enterprise and a few other businesses. So Craig has a new company that is now, 6-7 years old, Craig? A VFXI, which is converting all 2D technology into 3D. So, like we don't have enough technology. So what this is going to do is this, right. So this chip will be in your phone and you'll be able to see your text in 3D rather than 2D. So Craig, maybe you should tell us a little bit about the technology.
All right, well, I have actually two companies. So one is working on a little chip that can go in, microchip that will go in mobile phones and tablets, and enable them to have holographic displays. Second company, you've seen LED walls, whether you know them by that name or not. You've seen great big giant video walls in signs in Vegas or Times Square. So my second company is making giant holographic displays like that to create huge holographic experiences. The chip company, not only does it make the phone or tablet display so it can be holographic, but it also takes 2D VR and turns it into 3D VR. So virtual reality, I don't know if, how many people here know what virtual reality is, but you could be, with virtual reality, you could be wearing a tiny little thing on your face, and you could be in LA at this meeting, and you could see everybody here, just like you were sitting here. Right. And that's the way 3D VR should be. It should look natural like you're here, but most VR today is 2D, like you're inside of a projector, spherical projector screen, and you just don't get that psychological feeling. So our chip converts any 2D VR into this immersive 3D VR, like you're actually there. Yeah.
Do you interface, like, do you interact with the hologram in the hologram, or do you have to interact on the phone itself?
Oh, interactivity could be anything from gesture to haptics. So we have a relationship with a defense contractor that wants to do more commercial kind of work, and they have a haptics. So haptics has traditionally been a glove where the computer knows where your fingers are, and you can come down and touch a 3D object in space, and it has actuators so you can actually feel it when you touch it, and you can move objects and things like that, interact with objects. Only they have a bare hand haptics. So with your bare hand, you can not only go down and feel the object, the surface of the object, but even right down to the texture of the surface and even text that might be printed on it. Yeah. So the future's coming. So basically, from the smallest displays to all the way to building-sized displays, gets bracketed by these two companies, and everything else in between is going to fill in, and it's going to be a historical event, the equivalent of going from black and white TV to color TV. Only it's going from stuff where your entertainment or communication or whatever is stuck to a screen. You'll be in it and it'll be around you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Craig. So this will just kind of give you a flavor of amount of research and development and all the things that are occurring in our society that, as a nation, I call this a nation of microscope. We look at every single situation 100x in so many different ways, and we keep coming up with more and more and more solutions to enhance what we are doing. But I also believe that one of the best business opportunity of the future will be people that will be bringing people back in the center again, because people have gone way too much on one side. We need to bring people back to become, being human again. And that itself is going to be a very interesting, challenging marketplace. So already I have friends that are psychologists, counselors, and things like that. They are actually teaching people how to give up their phone for so many hours a day, which is not the easiest thing in our society. People are saying they would rather give up everything else, but they can't give up their phone. So that's the love relationship people have. So the opportunities of the future would be coming from counseling, where people will be counseled that, hey, it's time for you just to enjoy a very simple little life. One question I have is the video that we shared with you about the gentleman that had the car accident and then the drone comes in. What's your feeling about that particular video in terms of how quickly everything shows up versus the other gentleman is on the phone? That's scary. Okay.
I'm for it.
Huh?
I said I'm for it.
Okay.
I can appreciate the frustration of the guy who was trying to figure out which thing to push on his keypad.
Right.
Half the time I can't get my keypad to show up.
Right.
But yeah, I'm with the other thing being too scary for me.
Should multiple systems communicate efficiently?
It's Skynet.
Skynet. Okay.
Does it raise issues of privacy and I mean, we're all known, right? I mean,
Right.
It does,
a discrete
Yeah.
individual, but we're not in
and
many
they
ways.
never really said a word to each other,
Right.
which said something right there. There was no communication amongst the two people that were involved in this situation. He totally walked away from it.
I have nothing to do with that video. I just got it from a
Yeah.
friend in Karachi, Pakistan, like 3 days ago, and I just thought it would be so good to share where the technology is going.
I'll give you one more example, interesting example. So you're driving in town, and all of a sudden this group of school kids and their teacher step out in front of your car, walking across the crosswalk. They were hidden behind a truck. And you're trying to decide what to do because there's not enough space to stop. So I run into the kids, or do I turn and swerve into a store or a wall, very possibly killing yourself, but saving the kids, right? That's kind of a moral decision that you have to make in your head. But now imagine you're in an auto-guided car, and the auto-guided car sees this situation, and it has to make a decision to swerve into this brick wall and possibly kill the occupant versus hitting this group of kids on the crosswalk.
Right.
That's, it starts to get to really bizarre
Right.
ideas.
So do we have any estimates how long will it take to get the driverless car up and running and going? Because I don't see that happening for fairly long period of time.
I think in 3 or 4 years you'll be able to buy a car that'll be auto-guided. At least some of the time, yeah.
But you can still override it, right, as the driver?
Yes, yeah, you can turn it on and off or override it.
That's where,
What's our electric car company?
Tesla.
Tesla has a new $30,000 low price car coming out, and I heard something about that has a driverless option on it.
Already.
Yeah.
There was a wonderful episode on Planet Money about the cycle of time it took to get rid of elevator operators.
Right.
For people to become comfortable with the notion that if they push the button, the elevator was actually going to go there. Whereas because when elevators first started, and I remember when I worked in Congress in 1973, one of the last patronage jobs that congressmen could have was they were able to hire their constituents to run the elevators in Congress, and they stayed on for a long, long time. But it was, this notion of somebody operated that elevator because, you couldn't trust the elevator to go there on its own. And now, of course, if we walk into an elevator and somebody was operating it, it's like, no, I'll take the next one. Thank you.
Isn't that kind of like Oregon and the gas?
No, yeah.
Filling gas, of course.
But I mean, it's now we trust that if we push it, and now there's these elevators where on the outside, you say what floor you want to go to, and they say, come in, we'll get you there. You won't see any buttons, but trust us. And we do. We walk into that elevator, there's no buttons, and it takes us to the floor.
Yeah, by the way, this isn't actually a new technology. For many decades now, there's been a race every year across Baja California for auto-guided cars.
Right.
And there's all kinds of rocks and brush and cliffs and canyons and ravines and stuff that you have to navigate all auto, and much less the road, where you have sides and things. In 1995, or prior to 1995, I was heading Intel's first partially government-funded project. It was funded by DARPA. And we developed this chipset to create massively parallel digital signal processing stuff. And Carnegie Mellon, it was jointly with Carnegie Mellon, and they had a car in the mid-90s that could drive down the freeway at 55. They didn't really want to tell people about that. But that's 20 plus years ago, and we're 20 plus years later, and it's not as much of a technology issue as it is a laws and moral decisions and other kinds of
Airplanes go
things.
on auto,
Airplanes are essentially auto as well. Yeah.
But I would see it coming faster for public transit, like in New York where you have bus designated lanes,
Right.
than having buses or, autopilot or whatever, driven vehicles that are on public transit.
Now imagine semis with no cabs going down the freeway, automated. Because it doesn't go to sleep, right?
Yes.
Right. So one discussion point in the fourth wave of civilization that needs to be addressed is there are those that are digitally haves. They're well educated, they can adapt to digital technology, they're able to start their businesses, and they do all sorts of things. But at the same token, we have middle-aged men in our society that are dying faster. They're involved in drugs, opiate. They don't have the skill set to compete in the fourth wave of the economy. So as a nation and as people, we have got so much good in us. We need to find solutions to address that issue. There is a group that we are at a very preliminary stage of working with that has a solution with integrated medicine, where you have psychiatric help, nutritionist, and the general medicine working together with this group of people. So I don't know how many of you have read a book from J.D. Vance. It's called Hillbilly Elegy. That one of the book that Bill Gates recommended for this summer to read out of his 5 books. So we have 2 Americas right now. We have one that is stuck in the second wave, and then we have the bi-coastal America. which is doing very, very well. So the key thing we have to talk about amongst us is how do we communicate with this group of people so that we can create more common ground. We can't take a position that we are better than them and they are worse than us. We are all riding in this whole thing together because it's like a car with 4 wheels. Do you really want 2 of the wheels not to have enough air? So we want to make sure we have enough air. So the key thing is when we lift people up, we lift our economy, we lift our destiny, we lift everything with that. So I just kind of wanted to check and see how do you folks feel. We are a nation that is divided so much and the polarization has happened so much. What can we do to get the healing started so that we can add value to those groups that need help? What do you think, Ron?
Well,
Say the road then.
to me, so one of the first things is we have to stop insulting each other.
Right.
And first we actually have to physically stop insulting each other and then follow that up with mentally sort of finding a place of saying, well, okay, I'm gonna, as an act of intention, I am not going to call you all these different things that I think you are.
Right.
And then the next place would be to start thinking, okay, I'm not going to call that person all those things because that's what I think they are, but actually maybe they're not.
Right.
And be willing to entertain that thought.
Right.
And then maybe get to the place of thinking, I'm not going to call you this because even though I think you might be that, I'm willing to entertain you might not be that. Even if you are that, there was a journey that got you there.
Right.
And then maybe spend some time contemplating that journey to try to find some kind of common ground.
Right.
Because probably the most stark lesson I got in my life of how we can be on journeys and get to a different place than where we started that journey was when I was I was at law school at Loyola. I was singing in the choir at Loyola Marymount, which was where Loyola was the law school. And I was in a play, 1776, and one of the guys, I played one role, and another guy was playing another role. We were both in the choir. Really nice guy. His name was Fritz Seidler. And I knew Fritz was, his parents were German. My mother was German. She was a refugee from the Nazis. And Fritz and I really enjoyed each other. We liked each other. And we talked more about our families, and then I learned what Fritz's father did during the war. Fritz's father was a sharpshooter at Berchtesgaden. For those of you who don't know what Berchtesgaden is, that was where Hitler hung out to get the cool Bavarian air.
Okay.
And this guy who I like, his father, was one of the sharpshooters protecting Hitler. And somehow, my mother, who fled Berlin in '33, and this guy's father, who came here after the war, he was actually not a member of the Nazi Party. He was actually, he wasn't even in the SS. But that was a job. Somehow, we managed not to pass on, our parents, my mother, his father, managed not to pass on to their children this notion that we should automatically hate each other. And so I guess in that sense, Fritz taught me a very important lesson, which was if I found the commonality first, it really helped me get over the other piece of it.
Beautiful.
So
I guess a question kind of adding on to that. I guess then how do you solve it within a generation? Because I feel like the speed of this fourth wave and the speed of everything's happening, we kind of, I had a science teacher who had a kind of similar idea. Kind of, with each generational turnover, new ideas come and old ideas go, and the world moves on. But with kind of modern health practices, I guess the old generation does not turn over as quickly as it used to, and they still kind of push forward where the country goes. So I guess how within a generation, where people who are set in their ways, whether or not they teach the younger generation how to be, how do you change the minds of those who have thought the same way for 30, 40 years?
That's a great
I would say it's way harder. The other side of my story is, Jeannie Gratz.
Yeah.
Bob and Jeannie Gratz were Bob was the only white minister who took part in the Montgomery bus boycott. Klan was trying to blow up their house a couple times. Jeannie's his wife, they're now in their 80s. And as apropos of that generation, Jeannie says, I hate to say this, but I think we just need a few more funerals. Maybe that generation just has to die off.
Right.
And based on what you were saying, Mohammed, that generation is doing a good job. No, it's tough within that one generation. It's tough, but I still think, there's at least 2 generations going on right now in our country where there is hope. And maybe the 3rd generation is going to just, self-immolate.
I also think that you were talking about new jobs in the 4th wave, and I see in the legal profession that I write about, that some of the more progressive law firms are bringing in professionals to teach them how to get one generation to the other, learn from one generation to the other, and being able to communicate, find those commonalities that you were talking about, Ron, and harnessing the real value that I see as a college professor millennials bring, with open-mindedness, with a willingness to share, with a willingness to pick one another up, with a willingness to find different ways to problem solve. And I think that some of the law firms that I know about that are doing this are doing it really well, and they're gaining so much momentum in terms of growth, in terms of profitability, in terms of helping their clients more efficiently.
I mean, at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we did a day-long training, and a significant portion of it was teaching how it was to create this awareness within our own office of our, intergenerational biases, and and first of all, it's hilarious. If you ever have the chance to do this in a business organization, I recommend it, because one thing, it's hilarious. It's a lot of fun, and it's shocking how much we learned about each other, and the growth that came out of it.
So one of the things that we are hearing more and more in terms of the 4th wave that we are in is people's adaptability to authenticity is very rapid. They're able to see a real authentic narrative when they see it very quickly. And I don't want to use the example, but someone in their 70s that ran, Bernie Sanders, he was able to connect with the young people in a very authentic fashion. I went to a rally just to see what was going on. So this 4th wave, to me, is about being authentic. Having authentic networking, authentic meetings, authentic communication. I think that is something we need to be looking at more and more of, because people are saying we only want real thing and just give it to us as it is. Don't sugarcoat it 11 different ways. And I was just wondering what you folks feel about that. So Werner, you came towards the tail end, and you're a producer, you have done a bunch of things. What do you think?
I was late and not quite experienced, but then it became such a challenge to get here. I knew I'd be late. I said, it became personal. I'll definitely come. I know I'll be late. No, I just have to go because it's so hard to get here. But authenticity is, especially in advertising. I think Brian and I actually had a meeting this morning and discussed the very same things.
Right.
Nobody wants to buy. Everybody wants to buy. Nobody wants to be sold to.
Right. Right. Beautiful. Right. Cindy.
I just wanted to mention, this is kind of on a smaller scale, but it's an example of people sort of building bridges in the community, but using technology. Have you heard of the app called Rooster, or not app, but the website that says Rooster?
Yes.
Could you say that again?
It's called Rooster.
Okay.
And it's basically people join up and say, I belong to the Rooster now, and then they'll say, oh, I need to ride to the airport, tomorrow, or I need help with emergency childcare, or oh, I've got this old bed I'm willing to give it away, or it's just kind of like neighbors.
Right. It's like next door. That has just taken off like crazy.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe more solutions like that where people meet each other and help each other.
It's happening more and more in our society because people are able to rent out their wedding dress now, for a right price. And they are finding many different ways to monetize things in the best way, because now people have a credit rating. They had that for a long time, but they have a system where your Uber driver, once he leaves you, within few minutes you get an email. How would you rate him? So there is a rating system, and they also have a rating system. I checked mine the other day. It was like 4.89 something. The drivers rate the passenger, which is very interesting.
There's also a website called TaskRabbit, where if you have things, and people in the building I live in do it all the time for moving, for running errands. People specialize in putting together IKEA furniture.
Yes.
So seriously, people will come.
They need to have
all
a support group just for the IKEA furniture.
Yeah. If you're out of a job or you're doing something else part-time, you can be a rabbit, and then go do, people ask you to come do things, and you do it and get paid, and then you rate each other too. So it's like that system as well.
Right. I think one thing that Marvin, please.
I have I guess a concern maybe is that, and that is, we've talked a lot about thanks for being late.
Yes.
But he talks in there about this living in this age of acceleration, and he tries he applies Moore's law to all of what's happening in business, in the markets, as well as the environment, and not just technology. But what it implies, I think, is that that's not going to slow down. We may slow down as humans in our own educational endeavors and our cultural issues and that kind of things. But it implies that if there's not some movement to keep up with, if that's accurate, that's this kind of this fourth wave stuff. If that's accurate, that means we have certain skills. Economically, we're continuous learners, all the things that you're talking about. And if those aren't there, it seems to me what's going to happen, we can do the human relationships things, but there's going to be some expansion of divisions around economic viability and capabilities in our society. So now, whether Uber is going to solve that kind of thing, I don't know. I mean, the difference between an Uber driver and what you're talking about, I mean, and the capabilities that flow out of that, and the opportunities that flow compared to being an Uber driver. It's almost this class division is going to settle out increasingly around this acceleration issue. If I'm not have a pretty basic education, a pretty basic skill set, I'm in a network of folks who are going to support this rapid change and that kind of thing.
So what Thomas Friedman in his book is talking about, thank you for being late, is as close to fourth wave as it comes from what we have seen. So he is giving a message to the Americans that if you want to be successful, you have to start thinking, acting, and working like immigrants. So the other day, I tell that story, I shared it with a lot of you. I take a Uber, and the gentleman that picks me up at the airport, he's from Argentina, and he is telling me how great his life is because he's doing between 20 to 40 Uber rides a day. And then he goes on to tell me on the weekend he's able to do more because he's taking people on bar hopping in Pearl District and all that, because those are short rides. Then he tells me how part of his house he rents out with Airbnb. And in my mind, I'm double clicking that he's already in 2 of the fourth wave companies. No wonder he's so happy, right? So one of the key thing that I had discussion with Cindy and Steve and some other folks and Michelle, in the fourth wave, we need to also be talking about making sure people have enough social capital. The reason you don't see many Asians as homeless is they have social capital. Family system is strong. The support system that they have is very, very strong. So this is an opportunity for the greater American community and then other minority communities to start having discussions. And we need to find ways and circles to talk about the best practices. How Asian families are helping their kids do their homework better and why they are able to do this. How can we take this with other communities? So I think there is an opportunity here to have better discussion. Another example will be Jimmy Carter had a circle where he invited people of all groups. He also invited some gentlemen from the white supremacist movement. So one of the guy was with KKK, and for the first time he had a discussion with a black man. They ended up sharing meal together, and this gentleman learned that his needs as a black man and my needs as a white male are the same, because the Maslow hierarchy of need is same for everyone, right? It starts with the battery, goes with the Wi-Fi, and then you need your food and air and water and everything else after that, correct? So we have the opportunity to have those discussions. And one thing I thought that was really cool was Mark Zuckerberg visiting all 50 states. He goes to Ohio. He had a meeting with a Democratic family. He had dinner with them, and this family chose to vote for Trump. But the point is the fact that he broke the ice and had that discussion, there is humongously big opportunities for people that want to be bridge builders in the fourth wave. I think fourth wave is going to be one of the funnest place for us to spend time if we are willing to marry our passion with our compassion. So those that are willing to be more philanthropic with their time and use the term from Laura Andreessen, Mark Andreessen's wife, wrote a book called Giving 2.0. Mark Andreessen is the gentleman that created the Microsoft Explorer and all that. So she teaches strategic philanthropy at Stanford. Her book is Giving 2.0, and she talks about it's not how much you give, it's how you give. So you look at people sitting in this room, look at all of yourself. It's warm, 100, 104, 105 degrees. You chose the time, and you chose to spend your time over here because you don't know, just being with each other, we might end up taking one thing home that can change our life for good. So Giving 2.0 talks about it's not how much you give, it's how you give. So if all you have is to give 1 hour and you are able to do a reading class for an inner city kid and convert him into an awesome reader, you are a philanthropist, because you are giving something which you'll never get back, is your time. That's your life. But you are making a huge, big impact. So impact with philanthropy is another very important aspect in the fourth wave, along with building social capital. So we need to teach our young kids how to create those opportunities, to learn how to network properly, how to remember people's name. The gentleman from Horizon, as an example, which is in Dudley's book. And one of the most fascinating book that I have recently come across, and I'm going through it right now, is called Fusion Leadership. And Dudley Slater, he's the former CEO of Integra Telecom, which started with basically zero, and you folks were doing as much as 600 plus million in revenue from what I remember. I was a client of yours in the Umpqua Bank building for a long time. So one of the stories in this book is about the gentleman who's the CEO of Horizon Air, who retired. And every time he's flying in the plane, he will not leave till he's helping the air hostess clean up the plane. And he's the last to leave. What kind of an impact that sends to the employees of the airline? And because of that example, their best pilot will come and help paint maintenance equipment on his day off, because of the kind of social capital that was created within the organization. What do you think of that, Steve? You're the writer, and Cindy's the editor.
You summarized that story pretty well, didn't you?
Right?
Definitely did, yeah.
So what do you think? Dudley, you are the star here. You are the one that wrote the book.
I think Jeff Pineo brought a lot of humility to his role as president of Horizon Airlines.
Right.
And I think as a result of that, and his conscious effort to create social capital,
Right.
he built a very fun place to work.
Right.
People look forward to going.
Right.
And I think it more than resulted in a huge success.
Right. Right.
And I think there's other examples like that out there. But
Right.
I think your concept of building social capital is a very good one.
Right. And then you have Harry Scholes, the founder of Starbucks. One of Harry's employee got AIDS long time ago, and he was diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. So first thing he does, he goes and visit his employee in the hospital, and then he assigned 2 full-time Starbucks employees to look after that gentleman that may not be around very long, and he's fighting for his life in AIDS. And he made sure that this young man is taken care of, and he went out and he told him, I have your back. You don't have to worry about anything, but you have to get well. We will take care of the rest. He kept his insurance, he kept him on the payroll, he took care of him. And those are the kind of examples that build Starbucks into such a wonderful, great company, where he spent more on purchasing his employee health insurance than the coffee that they were purchasing. And those are the examples that we need more of. So at this juncture, I think we have solved most of the world's problems already. I really like to thank all of you for joining us. We wanted to share a few things with you today. This is our first symposium on the fourth wave of civilization. We chose investment as a thesis and a theme, and there will be many, many more coming in. So thank you so much. We have coffee, tea, everything, and just socialize now. And you can leave after 11 o'clock.